Yeah. All right. The final thing we're going to talk about, and we won't talk about this too long. We probably should have talked about it earlier so we could talk about it more. Deandre Ayton remains a free agent. Let's give us 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah.
All right. I knew this was going to happen because I have been saying for ages. I wrote a goddamn article. You can go find my Medium account, and it's basically about how Deandre Ayton, why he hasn't gotten the max, because he doesn't deserve a max contract. Partially it's because he's a center, but he still hasn't signed. So I put this in our Google Doc that has it's the episode production sheet. I put who, what, where, when, why. Those are the questions you ask as a journalist. So James, who, what, where, when, why Deandre Ayton hasn't signed?
Yeah, okay. Well, I think who and what are kind of similar, but okay, you know what? There's a few things at play here. Who, he's starting to develop a reputation as like potentially a little bit lazy or like not super passionate about the game, whatever, that's like problematic, right? And then what? He's a non-spacing, barely switching big in an era where that really doesn't fly. He's shown some potential to be a switchable defender, but like he's not an outright like you're not that happy if he's on a guard. Like that's Bam Adebayo. You're pretty much like, okay, that's fine that you're guarding a guard. That's what you need to be if you're not going to shoot, or else you're just not a max type of player at that position, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, he's like Clint Capella, the stronger version. It's just not a max player. Although, if I may digress quickly, it astonishes me that in 2018, this team picked him with the #1 overall pick and then turned around and said, you know what? You're not really the type of player that's worth a max contract. It's like, well, I'm pretty much exactly what I was projected to be when you picked me with the #1 pick. I had somebody on Twitter say to me, well, the game has changed. Like, that much since 2018? I don't personally think so.
Because they didn't give it to him last off season, right? So that means like in 3 years the game completely fucking changed.
Yeah, it's like I didn't ask you to pick me #1. You pick someone #1. The implication is if you hit your projections, you're worth a max contract. He hit his projections, right? Anyway. Yeah, roughly. He didn't exceed expectations, but he hasn't fallen too short. Like, well, what did people think he was going to be? He didn't shoot threes in college or anything. Where, and I guess that's why as well. Where Phoenix? When? Now? Your turn.
Okay, so I would basically my whole thing with Ayton is I made a fun spreadsheet where I just did a bunch of recent free agent contracts, and I looked at the season prior, win shares, box plus minus, 3 seasons prior, win shares, box plus minus, put their age, contract length, all that stuff. I just did a bunch of numbers and then did a bunch of averaging to kind of figure shit out. So of this free agent or extension eligible centers that were signed in between their age 23 through 25 seasons, which are roughly similar age as Ayton / experience level, depending on when they came out. Those guys on average got basically a 4-year, $75 million deal for about $17.5 million. All right. You go, all right, well, Ayton's better than the average. And you're right. But he's not demonstrably better than the average. And a lot of the reason he's better than the average is because of game time. So this season, 7.3 win shares, 2.8 box plus minus. The players in that similar age bracket, the season before they signed this extension, 6.4 win shares. Ayton beats that, but 2.56 box plus minus. He beats that, but not significantly. You look at the 3 years average, it's 14.4 win shares and 2.02 box plus minus. Ayton, 3-year average or 3-year total and average, 18.8 win shares, better, only 1.5 box plus minus. So we're talking about a guy who's been basically what you would expect. He's played more than a lot of these other guys before they got their extension. No duh, he was a fucking #1 overall pick. Teams draft those guys to play him. But on a rate basis, he hasn't really been all that much better. And then you go look at where he's made improvements. It's predominantly been on the defensive end, but last season, the Suns had the 6th best defense in the league. In terms of defensive box plus minus, Ayton was 5th on the Suns. 5th. 5 starters. He was 5th. right? Like, I mean, we're talking about a guy who is a good player, but that is clearly not a max player. And I think all of this boils down to who Ayton thinks he is and who the rest of the league thinks he is. And I think the Suns were right in everything that they've done so far and being like, you're not worth this. Was that a mistake with the number one overall pick? Yes. But I do think, as you would say, it's not a good idea to be like, well, we made a mistake 3 or 4 years ago. So we're just going to keep on making that same mistake.
It's just like, yeah, like it's just too late, you know? Like
It's
it's
like
like
he might get good enough to be like worthy of a max deal, but to get a max deal, you have to have done something worthy of a max deal, not be like, well, like, he couldn't be worthy of that. I mean, like, shit, I could like suddenly find some like, shoes with MJ scribbled on it on like, an electrical wire and become Michael Jordan. Like that could happen and I could be worthy of a max deal. But before that happens, and before I play, who's not giving me a 5-year, $251 million contract with a full no trade clause and a 5th-year player option? The Wizards. They will not do that. Then again, maybe they would.
let's call it off, man.
All right, let's get the fuck out of here. Sorry, Deandre Ayton. I love saying how you don't deserve money.
Yeah,
I
you
still
just deserve a
like
humble $15 million a year, probably, you know?
I
Like,
said he deserved like 25 million based upon like his
oh shit,
play and
okay.
potential. That's a good deal, but like
Come
asking
on.
for over 30 is insane. And that was generous. I basically generous. You could say he deserved less than 20 million as well. But that's kind of the point. He's not anywhere near max guy. I'm bringing it home though.